That's a really good question. I honestly think he played his best basketball when he was a Hornets, not as a Clipper.
Yeah,
Fair.
I would agree, but I mean that all depends on, the relationship with the team. Like how does he want to be remembered by? I forget if it was Vince Carter or Shaq, one of them had like this particular relationship that didn't bode well for their former team. And so you just have to if it were all even, I would say the Hornets. He was most dominant there.
Fair.
Oh,
Fair. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome into another episode of the Bitcoin Ballers podcast. It is episode 15 and it is over. The Denver Nuggets are the NBA champions. Every single one of us have to, bow our heads and apologize because we all slept on the Nuggets all year long. Yeah, we did. We did. We did. There's
Ulric is
game.
having it.
However,
Having it.
Ulrich and I can take a victory lap because last week we assured everyone the Nuggets were winning 3 straight, that it would be over in 5. I called my shot. You can see the link. You can see it in the description on YouTube. Be sure to like down below. If you're not subscribed, subscribe. If you're watching on YouTube, hop on over to, or if you're watching on Twitter, hop on over to YouTube. That does everything that I got to intro. And of course, I'm joined by my co-host Ulrich, but we have a very, very special guest today, none other than Andrew Yang. No, not that Andrew Yang, the better Andrew Yang, the Bitcoiner, none other than eCurrency Hodler on Twitter. Andrew, welcome to the pod, man.
Thanks, Q. Thanks, Q. You know what's funny is that people always mistake me for the former presidential candidate. Even when I was at Casa and I was like hopping on calls with clients, they would be so disappointed. They would see me and they would be like, "Oh, we thought you'd be the presidential candidate. We were so excited." I'm like, "Bro, like I'm the better one. Get with it. Get with the program."
You guys, the funny part to me is the fact that Andrew Yang is like that Andrew Yang is a billionaire. Like he is a tech billionaire. So the audacity of anyone to think like, oh yeah, he just has like a small bit role. No offense to you, no offense to you at all, but like the man could buy and sell Casa like today. Ah,
Yeah, no, it's
ah.
funny. But like honestly, it's like good for me because it helps my OPSEC. Like if you type Andrew Yang Bitcoin like in Google, you ain't gonna find me. So I'm
There's
with it. I'm with it. Power to him.
there aren't too many Ulrich Patillos out there. Me and my dad.
I mean, yeah, you show me another Q and last name omitted, and I'll show you a fake profile. All right, let's dive into what we saw last night, what we saw for the last week, more or less. Arguably, what we've seen all playoffs, which was just absolute sheer dominance. Um, I don't want to do like the hyperbolic comparisons that you're seeing on ESPN of like, oh, are Jamal Murray and Jokic like as good as Kobe and Shaq? Like, simmer down, simmer down. Um, Absolute dominant performance. I think Jokic can now lay claim and can enter a class of player that is reserved for champions in the same way that we reserved calling LeBron James that caliber of player until he finally won the championship, until we kind of more or less reserved it for Giannis, even though like everyone loved Giannis and was like cutting him slack. But then once he won the championship, it was like, all right, now you're that caliber of player, the caliber of player that guys like Charles Barkley, like CP3, like Vince Carter, Allen Iverson, Patrick Ewing, like they're not at that caliber. Where does Jokic, in your opinion, rank compared to all other just NBA champions and more specifically NBA Finals MVPs?
Andrew, I want you to take this one first.
Damn. Well, like you said, he ain't no Shaq. So we know that for a fact. But I will say Jokic, I've never seen somebody control and dominate a game without scoring like I saw Jokic do in like game one. That was a wild. And like the first two quarters, he had like 10 assists. And it was insane. Like I've never seen that before. So I think he's a different type of player too, right? Like Shaq was just complete domination, physical, like take ground and pound. But Jokic, man, I think higher IQ, better passing skills. Like I don't know, it's tough.
Yeah. So I've been studying this type of thing, and Jokic is one of those key uh, use cases or cases when it comes down to players and how they project their participation in a game. So Q knows I'm big on win shares, and even more so when you talk about what does it mean to be dominant. A dominant player, in my eyes, is essentially a player who, while he is on the floor, contributes a larger percentage to the team's win than anyone else. So that's what I call dominance. That's why, even though I think LeBron James is the best player of all time, I still think Michael Jordan is the most dominant. When it
Wow.
comes down to Jokic actually is if you were to normalize win shares, which is basically win shares over 48 minutes. Jokic in the playoffs, career-wise, is the fourth best all time. That means for every moment he's played, only 4 players have been more dominant than him in the playoffs, and that's Michael Jordan, David Robinson, and Wilt Chamberlain. Similar numbers in the regular season, and in terms of I think he's top 10 or top 6 all time in playoffs. But in terms of this season that just took place right now, in the regular season, Jokic had the 10th most dominant performance regular season all time. In the playoffs, I believe it was number 15 when it comes down to this one season, this one playoff performance. So, long story short, Jokic is an all-time great, at least in one category. He needs to perpetuate that over time, and he needs to have a few more of these performances, a little lesser, a little better. But he is essentially an all-time great. It's shown in this playoffs, and honestly, even without this playoffs, he still was. So I think it just basically establishes it in the mainstream eye.
I love the statistical side of this. I'm gonna go just smooth. I'm gonna smooth brain this very simply. Um, I think he is now. It is arguable, and you can make a case for both Dirk and Giannis, but he is arguably the greatest international player to have played the game. You have now, at least from an aspect of MVPs, he has one more than Dirk, and he's tied with Giannis. And then at the same time, he has the same number of championships as both Dirk and as Giannis. Now, my expectations, very bluntly and way too early, without seeing how the offseason shakes out, I'm not expecting this Nuggets team to repeat. There are certain aspects about Jokic that I love. I love the fact that this dude, he just doesn't give a fuck. Like, he's going back to Serbia. Like, he's pissed he has to stay in Denver to go to the championship parade. There's an aspect of that where I'm like, oh, love it. But then when you realize, like, he just wants to go to Serbia and like kick it with his family and like play on his farm, that's dope. Absolute respect. But then to me, there's like a little bit of that killer aspect that you're lacking. His transformation from like when he came into the NBA as just like drinking 2 liters of soda a day, like barely working out, like out of shape, to like realizing the development he needs to go through. I think it's going to be really interesting, and it's going to be on him to prove to us that he's willing to do the work to keep this streak alive and keep this streak going. I just unfortunately think there comes a little bit of a target on your back when you win a championship, when you put forward such a dominant performance. Every single other player in the NBA who's like, yo, this guy, like, I can ball harder than him, is going to come out against the Denver Nuggets and is going to have their best game. So now all of a sudden Denver kind of goes from being this team that was slept on all year. Whether you agree with that statement or not is irrelevant, because everyone had been sleeping on the Denver Nuggets. Not a lot of respect thrown their way. And now this upcoming year, they're the defending champs. You're going to get the best performance, or at least an attempt at your best performance against them every single night. I think that'll wear on this team. They're young. They're fresh. Like, this team will win another championship. But I don't think they're going to do it again, I don't think we'll see a back-to-back championship. They might make the finals. As long as the Lakers don't blow this, I think the Lakers will actually win next year, my personal bias aside. So that's sort of where I rank this. I think genuinely, like if Jokic comes back next year, puts in a performance that, again, he doesn't even need to win MVP. He just needs to be in that top 3 conversation again. And then they make a run for the finals again. And honestly, you can even lose the finals. Dirk lost his first finals, came back years later and then won. But if Jokic does something like that, where it's now 4 years in a row, you've been like either MVP or like very close to being the MVP, and then you won a championship and then lost a championship. It's like, all right, dude, all of Eastern Europe either likes one of 2 guys. If you're a tall guy, you're a Jokic fan. If you're short, you like Luka. So yeah, that's just sort of my smooth braining this a little bit.
Like there's a different brand of basketball players that are developing. Like back in the day, it was Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant. Like they were killers. But now we're seeing like very homegrown, very nice, very kind. Like it's a different brand of a star player. Like Steph Curry, I think kind of like started it. He's just like a very likable dude. Giannis, like made waves last year, just being like. Yeah, like he gave that whole speech of like being I forget, but like it was not like your typical like we need to win kind of thing. It was, and then there's Jokic, and was he the one where they asked him like like winning and losing, and he had that spiel about like, oh, it's not about winning or losing, it's about like life and stuff, so there's like a new brand of stars that are just like different now. Like they don't care as much about being that killer. Like I can't tell if that's a good or bad thing though.
I think that has a lot to do with the players that are propagated by the NBA. I think that when you consider the players that you mentioned in the 80s, 90s, I think the killer dynamic was very paramount to the way the culture was. You had Arnold and Stallone movies, and they were blowing people up, and
Yeah.
and they were and it was celebrated. It was very machismo, very masculine, very dog eat dog, killer be killed. I think with whether it's a political climate, kumbaya kind of thing, you have players that are kind of shut down for that type of nature. Kevin Durant isn't exactly. Kevin Durant works for every I guess shine he gets, every bit of shine he gets in the media. Whereas the NBA will look to feature the likes of Giannis, the likes of Jokic, one for an international perspective, but two because of a more kind-hearted approach when they're in front of the microphone, and that leads to a wider range of audience that says, oh, like we really don't have to relate sports to gladiators and violence. Like it can be kind of heartwarming and everyone likes each other.
Right.
A lot of the players kind of poo-poo on that nowadays. Whether whether it holds or not is one person's perspective on or another, but you can't deny that there are good players cut from multiple different cloths, and Jimmy Butler is another one that would sort of sacrifice his own personal gains for the betterment of his team. And as much as he is the alpha, you saw that if he's having a bad shooting night, he's okay with letting his role players take that shine for the greater good of the team. So I think that the NBA likes that brand right now. That's not to say that there aren't some dogs out there in the NBA that would be that classic Michael or Magic or Larry, where they're just not featured in when you turn on the TV.
So I want to address what you just said, Ulric, because like honestly, you could literally remove and replace Jokic today with LeBron James from 10 years ago, and that description is exactly that. Like how many times did we see LeBron get criticized because he made that last pass to the wide open guy at the end of the game, but it's like you don't have that killer instinct. Now I'm the one saying it. I want to really present this. Is there a player active in the NBA even in their prime. So LeBron can be in consideration here. Anyone that you would categorize as that killer.
Actually, like I feel like Jimmy Butler was like that guy. Like I feel like he's a grinder. He wants the ball in his hands in the fourth quarter. Like when you look at his play, like he takes the most shots. Like he wants the ball. So I feel like yeah, I mean he is comfortable like letting his role players play, but I don't know. I feel like he has more of that killer instinct than like let's say Jokic.
I would say that while he may, it didn't show. I would say that that depends on the night, and that's not necessarily fair to Jokic because Jimmy Butler was absent when his team needed him most.
Mm.
That doesn't take away from when they needed him most in round 1 or round 2. He was there for them. So I kind of disagree with that. I would say that. If there's one guy that I could just think about off the top of my head would be Devin Booker. Devin Booker is going to go down swinging, and he's going to take as many shots as he needs to keep his team in the game. And does that mean live and die by that same token as well? I would say that there may be some killers on other teams that may be hidden because they're not the number one option. Maybe Jordan Poole is that same way. Now you may say, well, I don't want Jordan Poole to be a killer. Maybe in the right system, you would say something different. Julius Randle is another one. So they're killers, and they put up some respectable numbers.
Nope, you're muted. You're muted for saying Julius Randle in that sentence. You're in timeout, Ulric. You have been muted. The host has muted you. Like you got no, you can't say Julius Randle.
This is dumb.
Okay,
this is dumb.
Like,
You're unmuted.
Actually, okay, so Kawhi from the Clippers, like in the fourth quarter, like he always took like the last shot, even if he was double or triple teamed, and they were out, like because he wouldn't pass the ball, right? Like so, I don't know. Like I feel like the age of like the killers, like not like we don't have someone who can actually take the next step, which was Kobe, which was MJ. Like Kawhi was it a little bit, but like he's not there anymore. Durant on the Phoenix Suns.
So I'm gonna cut you off just
Okay.
to say not a single one of these players you guys have named is a killer, in my opinion. And the reason why, and you did name the two that come to every single person's mind, Kobe and MJ. What did Kobe do in Game 7 in 2010?
He blew it. So, and Artest, he had 7 for 21, 7 for 28. Artest ended up having 20 points in that game.
Right. But who led the team in rebounds that game?
Kobe.
He went and hunted what he could do on that floor.
So if that's the case, then so did Jimmy Butler here.
There's an aspect of Jimmy's play that he doesn't, and this is just like as simple as it is. He is not as well-rounded a basketball player, and he's not as skilled a basketball player as the guys the next tier up, like a Kobe, an MJ, and even a LeBron. He's just not.
Okay,
and
hold
so,
on, timeout.
And if you say Julius Randle,
no, it's because bring up J-Dub, the Lakers 21 mil. See, here's the thing. See, we're speaking on a different definition of what killer is.
Because I'm trying to get somewhere.
Yeah, I would like to know what that definition is. Go ahead.
Let me take you somewhere. That killer that I described, like a Kobe, like an MJ, those are the last guys who've ever had a three-peat. And those may be the last guys to ever three-peat. Unless someone in their crazy mind decides to give Jordan Poole a team, and Jordan Poole has a transformation akin to what James Harden had when he left OKC and became the dude in Houston, and all of a sudden he's putting up MVP caliber performances, and yet still was never good enough to even get to the finals. So there's this aspect of, dude, guys in the NBA are fucking talented. All right. These guys are able to score 20, 30 points if the system allows them to, and if a coach gives them the green light. Any player in an NBA team is capable of doing that. But I don't care if you can score 30 points a night. I care if when your shot's not working, if you're still able to make sure your teammates are able to get there, if you can create the environment so that your team still succeeds. Because no player scores 30 a night. MJ had his off nights, and he still figured out how to get it done.
So by that definition, LeBron isn't a killer. Like he's
No,
never had a three-peat.
No.
So you for sure.
I've long said LeBron is
greater
not a
than
killer.
LeBron.
I've long said LeBron.
What? I
love
still
and
haven't heard a
respect is big.
definition of killer.
But a killer can lead a team to that. Steph was the closest, in my opinion, we came in this generation. LeBron like knocked on the door, but neither of them could do that. Like Magic couldn't do it. This is something that Pat Riley defined as like, this is what a dynasty is. And like, there's only a small fraction. And I hate the fact that Bill Russell technically qualifies, but like he technically qualifies by this definition in an era of the NBA where there was one other 7-footer named Wilt Chamberlain that
So
he
you're
had
saying
only played.
a killer has to have 3 championships on a
a row.
team in a row.
Yeah,
In
you
a
gotta
row.
get the three-peat. And I don't think
What?
yeah.
That's so you can't be a killer and lose because killers lose all the time. You ain't watched the movies.
Yeah. And they lost in the finals, right? What year was that again?
Oh gosh, killers can't lose. Killers can't lose because guess what? Because Kobe wasn't the killer on that 3-peat team. He was the number 2 option. So he just happens to be riding the coattails of Shaq.
Ooh,
Yes.
that's a nice statement.
He was the number 2 option. At the best, he was the number 1 option on one of those 3-peat teams. Shaq got the MVP on all 3. So how much of the killer is he when Shaq got the MVP? Oh yeah, you're the killer. You're a killer. By the way, we're giving an MVP to someone else.
Pacers game 3, finals 2000. Game 3, Shaq fouls out. Kobe is injured, gets off the fucking bench, puts out a performance for the ages in overtime.
I'm sorry. We're gonna. That's right. The one game will justify not the other 15, 16 games during the playoffs.
No.
So Wilt Chamberlain is not a killer. Larry Bird is not a killer.
Nope.
That is wow.
Magic Johnson, not a killer.
Magic Johnson.
And I love Magic.
This is,
I like it though. I like
definition.
it. I like how the bar is so high.
Exactly. That's
Bill Russell.
Bill
Russell is not a killer because
exactly he's not.
But he won 6 in a row.
I know.
So your definition is screwed up.
But like so here's how I fix it.
Okay.
His championships are only worth like a quarter of every normal NBA championship because he played in an era with only 8 NBA teams.
Oh. I don't know. I don't know about that, bro. Like look at the league today, right? Like it's pretty weak. Like I would feel 16 top 10 are like actually competitive. Everyone else is like kind of trash.
Totally. Like
you can't say hold on, Andrew. You can't even say that because you would have before the playoffs started, you would have ranked the Heat as a number 18 team and they went to the finals.
Yeah.
So I get there is parity. I do want to say that, but because of this killer, this is a mainstream narrative. If you don't win, then you suck, and this causes teams to make irrational decisions with coaches, irrational decisions with players. Now the Heat second guessing. I saw an article. The Heat are second guessing. Oh, it's really time for them to go pick up someone. I hope the Heat don't say we need Russell Westbrook all of a sudden because it wasn't enough. Because the 8 seed getting to the finals wasn't enough, and they're facing up against a team that was essentially due to win an NBA title. How about you don't mess up? Oh, the Lakers need to break up the team that they just made to get to the Western Conference Finals. No, they need to build upon that. Maybe add a piece or two, Kyrie, Trey, but they don't need to say, you know what? Let's empty the closet and go rebuild. No, so it's like this type of thing. There are many killers, and killers aren't necessarily always successful. So we're gonna have to maybe during the offseason we can define truly what a killer is so that you don't have to pick and choose like, oh, Russell is but isn't. And I would like to fix your definition so you don't
Fair,
have any arguments about it.
fair. But the whole point of this is my way of saying I do not believe the Nuggets will repeat. Do either of you agree or disagree?
Yeah, I don't think they're gonna repeat.
Yeah.
Ulric?
Yeah, because you see my parody argument, the 18th seed was in the NBA finals. I think that and the last four champions have all been individuals. I think you'll see a team. We saw Jokic have a moment of weakness. Oh my gosh, he only has 4 assists. The Heat won. What are teams going to do? Just like the Wildcat in the NFL, they're going to say we learned how to stop that as soon as one team did. We learned how to stop Tim Tebow as soon as one team did. So, in my opinion, I think there will be even though Jokic is a champion, he's not a rookie anymore. I think a team, the Heat, have figured out a bit of a chink in the armor, if you will. And so what will end up happening is they're going to have to reinvent themselves in order to counter the counter. And so, yeah, I do. Long story short, I do believe that there will be. I take the field versus the Nuggets.
For the first time since I think it was the late 70s to right before the Lakers won their championship, we've had 5 completely different NBA champions. So, like, again, it goes to show you the parity of the NBA and what it's turned into now, which is awesome to see. Like, this is what you want. You want to see a different team vie for a championship. And this is honestly, like, ever since the summer where Kawhi ended up coming to the Clippers, like, that summer kind of marked the beginning of, dude, like any of these like 8, 9, 10, 12. I would argue like this year you legitimately had 12 different teams that could, or at least at the start of the season, were like, this is a potential like championship run.
You know who I actually attribute that to though? I attribute that to LeBron James. I think before LeBron James, players were kind of like stuck in their market. They were stuck on their teams, and like a lot of teams have this approach like you just like stay with one team for like ever. But LeBron was like he had enough star power, he had enough business acumen to hop around to different teams on his prerogative, on his choice. So he opened up the gates for that kind of movement, player movement across the NBA. And like we're seeing that today. Like look at what happened in Brooklyn, right? Like you had Durant, Kyrie, like everyone, like 3 or 4 star players went over there. Harden was there, right? Because they wanted to create their own super team, right? That I don't think that ever would have happened like maybe 10 years ago.
I agree with that. I don't think there's anything left to be said on that note. I think that player empowerment is a good thing. I think that lends itself, where the Bitcoin ballers, it lends itself to individual sovereignism to a degree. And the people who fight that essentially are sports status, and I can't stand that. It's like, what do you mean you think you own where a player should or should not play for whatever reason? And I think we're going to see a lot of it play out even more so this season. It's not going away. It's just a matter of the NBA tinkering with their rules to keep players where they want them. But again, everyone's individual incentives are going to, especially players that have made their quote unquote money, those incentives to play ball how they want are going to outweigh those incentives for a better contract or a weird little incentive here or there that the NBA is going to try to throw. Players want a ball, and they want to ball the way they want to ball, and it's a good thing.
And we're sort of seeing that across like franchises and then like the NBA. And I don't know if you guys want to talk about this, but like John Morant and like the gun thing. So like what Adam Silver, like he basically said, I'm gonna let the teams decide. I think during the Stern era, Stern would have just like drawn a hard line and been like, you're out. But Adam, he's like, I'm gonna take a hands-off approach. Like you guys kind of like deal with however you want to make sense of all of this, Yeah.
Well, I think Adam Silver is the best commissioner in professional sports. I think going back like way back to, I think it was his first year, maybe his second, like the whole Donald Sterling incident and like how he like got ahead of it, handled it, in my opinion, the right way and very, very well. And like, to see his progression. I mean, dude, honestly, Adam Silver is just a gangster. He was on the Dan Patrick show the other day, and they were like talking about how like Adam Sandler carries the ball a lot, and that they'll like talk to Adam about trying to like push an anti-carrying rule. And then Adam Silver unprompted goes, yeah, and maybe Jaw will listen to it. Like, dude, like he gets he like understands the assignment and where he is in the world. And like it's a shame too, because Jaw is genuinely my favorite player to watch.
He's so good.
But Adam also kind of understands like what he needs to do. Like he gave the players a huge
Platform.
line of slack
Yeah.
during the lockdowns and especially during the bubble. Like allowed the players to just have the platform that they requested and wanted, which was incredible. Like no other sports league has ever done that. But the NBA got a lot of backlash for that. And the NBA ratings took a huge hit in a moment where there was nothing else going on. And then they couldn't get the numbers that they historically got. And so there's a reason why you don't see a lot of these logos and slogans brought up anymore. And they do things differently to help the players still feel as though they're contributing to their societies. But at the same time, he's running a multi-billion-dollar conglomerate that like he has to handle business the right way too. So I think he does things very, very well. If only, I don't know, every other sports league could maybe take a cue from him, pun intended. Roger Goodell, I'm looking straight at you. That said, though, free John Morant.
Ja just needs to go to Orlando.
Dude, I explained this to you 2 weeks ago. You understand that he's in Tennessee, and Tennessee has an open carry law. Like
I understand. I can't wait for Bitcoin 24. Can't wait for Bitcoin 24. But no, he just needs to change the scenery. That's all it takes, man. Like, okay, if he feels alienated, just go somewhere. That's the best thing. If you wanna run the world, James Harden did the same thing. It's like, oh, y'all, I'm not feeling this. Trade me, and it's gonna turn him into a villain. But a villain scoring 30 points a game is a villain you can't ignore. And so, if I were Ja, I would say, okay, what are you gonna do? Now he's gonna stick his tail between his legs, like you're right, Mr. Commissioner. Like my bad. I'm going to cut off all my hair and put my gun away. No, they're guaranteed money. Trade me Orlando. Maybe do the gun toting thing, maybe at the shooting range, and then go ball out. And then guess what? Now you say like, oh wow, like he stuck the middle finger to the NBA, and he's still killing for another team with younger players and rising talent. I would love to see a potential trade. Get rid of some of them they're overloaded on power forwards. That's all I could say.
You emphasize your star power by going to a smaller market. That's what LeBron did with like Cleveland.
Yep.
Yeah.
Pause. He's from Akron, Ohio, so I don't think it was like, oh, I'm gonna go to Cleveland to like really like. So like,
whatever reason why he ended up in Cleveland,
he went back to Cleveland.
Market, like it emphasized his star power. Like that's just how it works.
One of the first articles I ever wrote was about it was humorous, but like I kind of believed it, about how Dan Gilbert, owner of the Cavs, and LeBron just colluded, and essentially he was like, LeBron, I'm never going to be able to attract a free agent here. Like it's Cleveland. But the only way I'm going to be able to build the right players and talent around you is like, we need high draft picks, but you're too good. So we're not going to do that. So why don't you leave for 4 years? Let's make a whole big fuck about this. And I will only draft players around you. And literally you look at the 4 years that LeBron is in Miami, Cavs never drafted a small forward. In fact, they signed Luol Deng, whose contract coincidentally expired the same year that LeBron's.
You really did your research on this.
I can't. I have no counter to that.
I would believe it, but like they fought, like the owner of the Cleveland, and
they fought. And then
Actors.
somehow he opens him up,
They
welcomes
were
him back.
acting.
Actors,
They
come on,
were
man.
acting?
Politicians,
Dude,
man.
Bro, what
This
the-
is
He opens him
What
back
kind of world are
home
we in?
with open arms. He welcomes him back
Yeah.
home. It's like, no shit, this guy like planned this out for years.
Am I
yeah.
in
We
the
got
Twilight Zone?
conned on that.
Like, is this?
I mean, at the
Honestly,
very least, he also went to a big market, got his championships. I mean, it's a win-win situation. I mean, now he's loved it. He's not hated in Miami, so he's loved in Cleveland, loved in Miami, loved in LA. Yeah, I'd say it was a good plan. I would love for Ja Morant to do something similar.
I mean, like here's my like my reservation with what both of you kind of said is like, yes, we can give a lot of credit to LeBron for this parody, but LeBron and Kawhi are the only players who've done this where they've like, get me the F out of here, send me to a new team, and then you deliver for the new team. Exception being the Clippers, but like at least he did it for Toronto. So like all these other players, James Harden, like, you know what? I can live with James Harden scoring 30 points in the first 2 rounds of the playoffs, man. Like James Harden, I'm gonna make a bold claim right now on this show. Will never play a minute of NBA Finals basketball.
But that's fine. Do you understand that Karl Malone never got a ring, that Charles Barkley never got a ring? That still doesn't discount them for being top 20 players all time. And I have the stats to back that up, because the finals isn't like again, more mainstream narrative. Basketball doesn't just start in the finals. Like, there are 82 games where you have to prove that you can get there. Then you have another 3 series where you have to grind to get there as well. And if those series don't matter, then then honestly, the league only needs to be 6 teams anyways. Like, let's just make the NBA an adult league. So there's a reason why all those accolades, there's a reason why there's a league, there's a regular season MVP. There's a reason why there's all NBA. Those things matter, even though they're subjective and they're faulty and they've failed many players over time. There is that's why it goes back to the killer argument. There are a lot of killers that may be casualties along the way. And so Kyrie Irving is a killer as well. He didn't get no three-peat. But it's like, these are the types of things that
I love Kyrie and he ain't a killer.
That we're going to change that definition during the summer. It's okay. But I guess what I'm saying is, these are all these different dynamics of, oh, I'll take James Harden doing this. A lot of teams will take James Harden doing that for the chance, just the very chance of being in the conversation, because no game in the NBA Finals is absolutely guaranteed. They talk about this time and time again. Enjoy, whether it's Super Bowl, the World Series, enjoy yourselves while you're here, because there's no promise you're coming back. And even LeBron James, he was there for 9 straight seasons, and who's to say that he'll ever get back? You know? And these are the kind of things that Denver's not, we just talked about this. You don't think they're going to win back to back? Honestly, they probably will lose somewhere in the Western Conference. There's a lot of teams that are building themselves up, and no season is promised. So therefore, because that's not promised, you can't discount the players that grind and perform and fall short. I refuse to mock a player who doesn't get a ring.
I get what you're saying, and I don't disagree on the notion that like you can't discount all the accolades and all the accomplishments leading up to the finals and the championship. However, and I think a really good example is like two examples that come to mind. First, Andre Iguodala. When he was on the 76ers, like that was their offense for a while. That was like, you got to give it to him. Like, offense runs flow through him. I think he became an all-star at one point, but like, it was kind of apparent, like, if this is our best player, we're not going to get it done. And for him to be a champion, he didn't even need to be the best, the second best, or even the third best. He literally only needed to be the defensive stopper, the 3-and-D guy. But that was the role enough for him to elevate and become now part of NBA folklore and change what defines being the MVP of a series. You don't need to be the highest scorer. You don't even need to have the best stats. You just need to be the dude who locks down the best player. Him and Kawhi literally changed that definition of what it takes to qualify for that.
He's an anomaly. He is an anomaly.
Fair. But because it's happened twice, you kind of have to start at
What
Kawhi
twice?
Leonard.
Kawhi Leonard for the Spurs.
For the Spurs was Finals MVP, was not the leading scorer.
He had 20 points a game at least. I'm going
LeBron
back.
still
Keep
averaged
talking.
more points, but the fact of the matter was he got the MVP not because of his box score statistics, which is what Jokic, whether you think it was or not, Jokic led
He had
the
a bunch of
playoffs
points, bunch of assists, rebounds.
and
Yes.
assists. But Kawhi didn't do that, nor did Iggy. They did it because they held LeBron James, a player considered the greatest at the game, to a level that was less than what we are supposed to expect from him. Another player who was MVP caliber on a team that was his, went to the finals even, but that's not enough. And then when he finally became the role player, a starter on the 2020 Lakers, he was a stopper. Wasn't in the MVP conversation by a long shot, sure. But when he became that role player, like Dwight Howard is now an NBA champion, not because he led the Orlando Magic to a championship, but because he played that role with the Lakers in 2020. And the point I'm trying to make is James Harden, his best chance, if he wants to be an NBA champion, is probably going to be that same role he had with OKC as the sixth man.
That's facts, dude. That's facts.
So he can have a great career.
Yeah.
But if he wants to have an NBA championship, he needs to reevaluate his role for a team, because I think just like Russell Westbrook in OKC, these guys require the ball, and honestly, Russell Westbrook, every single team since, they require the ball so much that they've lost the plot and they don't know how to play a 5-on-5 setting anymore, and unfortunately drag their team down to elevate themselves. And I think like all of these guys we're talking about, like, dude, DeAndre Jordan was at one point considered the best big man in the NBA. The Dallas Mavericks were fighting over bringing him over there.
No, he was not considered the greatest. He was
No,
a
I'm
solid.
not saying no.
Well, he was an All NBA first teamer, but like that was because there weren't many
Totally
traditional
Other
big men
centers,
available. Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
But there was that era where, like, if you had DeAndre Jordan,
highly
if you were
sought
going up
after.
against him, it was like you're afraid to go to the paint. Dude played 0 minutes in the NBA Finals. And you know what his role was? Body Jokic in practice. And because you had that body against Jokic, that experience teaching him, that elevated Jokic to another level. Like, I think, unfortunately, some of these players that we like, they're all-star caliber players for a period of time. For them to at least get that glory of being an NBA champion, you got to sacrifice ego a little bit. And I think players like James Harden, that like,
so you identified like LeBron James and Kawhi Leonard as like the two people to like go to different teams, win a championship because it was theirs, right? There's a third person that you missed that's going to do it, and that's Durant. Like I would put money on that for sure. Whatever team that he's gonna, right now he's on the Phoenix Suns. I think if he stays on the Phoenix Suns with Devin Booker, they're gonna win a championship, like hands down. I would put money on that.
I would take that bet, but we can talk about that why another time. We can go back to the series with the Phoenix Suns and the Nuggets about their glaring issues and how they essentially traded away their entire defense. But they can also retool, and if they retool around those two players, that's a good team to retool around. They just have zero defense. They took the first step in waiving Chris Paul, which I thought they were going to do. I want to go back to the Kawhi Leonard point, because although you say he stopped LeBron James, he also was the second leading scorer on the winning team 4-1. They're not going to give the series MVP to LeBron, who had 28 points a game in the series, but they only won one game. He had 17 points a game, 6 rebounds, over 1.5 steals, and he also was obviously the guy who stopped, I guess, the guy who got 28 points a game. So you could say that he stopped LeBron. If stopping him is 28 points a game, so be it. Essentially, the San Antonio Spurs are the epitome of, they got 5 guys, 4 of them are Hall of Famers, and who's going to score? It's any given player at any given time. Parker had 18, Kawhi at 17.8, it just seemed to be the obvious choice. One of the obvious choices, honestly, is a coin flip between Parker and Leonard. So I understand what you're saying, that he didn't have that same Iguodala effect where Iguodala was Curry was trash, somewhat Klay Thompson was trash, and then Iguodala had like 120-point game and he was bodying up LeBron the whole time. That's a different dynamic than what Kawhi was. Kawhi was essentially the best player on his team. Andre Iguodala was basically, I said, who the hell should we give this to? Because any decision would be bad. So we're going to go ahead and make a narrative around this. You can't, that's my spin on that.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Everyone has their
copy made me story. Right.
I want to address, let's first do, Andrew, you and I talked very briefly about like this new mid-season tournament.
Oh yeah,
that the NBA has introduced. I very quickly said to you, and I'll just say it right now, I think it's the stupidest idea.
Why?
Had. And I think here's how you really fix the NBA, and specifically All-Star Weekend. Stop with this team Giannis versus team LeBron. Let's do, and hear me out on this, because they used to do this for the rookie.
Hockey. Oh,
and they do it in hockey too. Team USA versus Team World. And I think it would be, dude, the last 5 MVPs, mind you, technically it's only 3 players, but they're all international players. Like, the international team would actually beat Team USA. And
that's pretty fair.
And I think it would be fun for a little while. And maybe some of these American players will like start to take basketball seriously again.
Yeah, like you couldn't do this like maybe 4 years ago.
No,
but like definitely now, like they have set the stage. Like Luka, Giannis, Jokic, like who else? Like that's those three in and of itself is like wild.
You get Jamal Murray, Wiggins, you get SGA, like you have like there's Canada, like, oh yes, I need to. That's how you fix this. Not a mid-season tournament when the players are already complaining about having too many games, when they have to like create this like minimum number of games a player must play to be qualified for awards. And then, oh, by the way, we're going to throw a mid-season tournament in the mix. It's as irrelevant as whoever is a conference finals MVP.
So if it's irrelevant, like why does like the NCAA do it? Like why do other organizations like soccer, they do it? They have like NCAA has a Thanksgiving tournament like in the middle of the year.
The Thanksgiving tournament is actually a preseason tournament. Those are like the tournaments down in Hawaii and stuff.
That's
those
a
are actually preseason tournaments. Soccer does it because there's actually no playoff in soccer. So like European soccer, once the season's over, like that is the champion. So those like mid-season cups are like a historic tradition because there is no playoff on the tail end of the season. And then the MLS, I think, did it for a while, but now stopped doing it. I don't follow the MLS anymore, so I couldn't tell you, but I can tell you for certain European soccer, like I would love that model in our sports leagues where it's like, hey, if you are a bottom 3 team, like you're going down to the G League, and then you bring up the 3 best G League teams.
The G League teams are owned by the major league.
I know they've designed it to be like Major League Baseball, but I'm just explaining more like that aspect of like, because then you can turn small markets into like a very interesting, fun dynamic too.
I have a question real quick. I'm glad you guys are having this conversation because my buddy tries to message me about this stuff. I don't want to partake, but since I'm on stage, Andrew, what's the incentive to this mid-season tournament?
More money.
So just a bonus.
Yeah, there's more money. I think it like also gives maybe teams that know that they're not going to get into the playoffs, like maybe something to like play for in the middle of the year. So like we've seen sometimes where like in the very beginning, like some teams get off to a really great start and like they're vibing really well, and then they hit the mid-season and then the All-Star break and then they just like taper off, right?
What's more? But I'm sorry, real quick. What's more money? What's enough?
What's enough?
What's enough to say? Because guess what? Hey, we're going to give you guys $100,000 to play in this like mid-season tournament for however long it is. You're not going to get much
Do you guys
drive.
really quickly? Do you want me? I have the rules for the midseason tournament up.
Okay, let's do
Pull
it.
them up.
So, this is something really interesting. So, these tournament games will actually count towards the 82 regular season games.
Yep.
I did not know that.
Yep.
The two teams that play in the finals will technically have played 83 games in the regular season.
That's right.
Essentially, the league will divide into 6 pools of 5 teams apiece. Almost like divisions. Those, like kind of like the World Cup, they'll play each other designated days during the first 6 weeks of the season. They'll play 4 group games. They'll play each team in their pool once, with 2 games coming at home and 2 games on the road. Then sort of the top couple of teams from each of these pools, or the top team from each of these pools, plus 2 wildcard teams, single elimination tournament. The players from the winning team win $500,000. Putting on just my business hat for a second, there's also the aspect that this will increase the salary cap, because the NBA will sell a sponsorship for this tournament, and then that will go into the pool of money that gets split amongst players and teams and owners, and then as such you will increase the salary cap, so players will have an opportunity theoretically to actually reap the reward of this from a just pure, now that the salary cap has gone up, my salary, my contract can be negotiated at a higher value.
So yeah, so you can also stay in one location longer. Traveling is a huge pain in the ass for these NBA players, right? And so if you have a mid-season tournament, you're telling me that I play the same number of games, and if I win it, I'm just paying 1 extra game over everyone else. Plus, I get a financial incentive. Plus, I get to stay in one area for about a month. Why not?
One area for a month. One area, because these
Or
people
sorry,
are.
a couple. Sorry, maybe a couple weeks, maybe not a month, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's like it's basically everyone has an elongated road trip except for a few teams, except for 5 teams maybe.
Yeah. And that's advantageous for you because more rest. You don't have to travel as much.
Yeah. I mean, in my opinion, at the end of the day, they're gonna look at the bottom line. It's gonna be 500 grand, and it's make that in 2 games, and that's if they win. So, I just feel like in the players that matter, they make that in 2 games. I'll see that as an opportunity to rest. If I'm making, how many players are making 30 million a year? That means that I have a 2% chance to make an extra 500,000. LeBron would say, "You go ahead, young buck. I'm gonna give these knees an ice for about a week." So there's just no incentive, because the NBA, it's a money grab for the corporate entity. I feel like it's just you could say, "Oh, but one day your salary cap will go up." The salary cap's going up anyways, with the money printing, with the Cantillon effect, with the media entities. Every minute they're stealing more eyes for people. The salary cap didn't go down during 2020. It ain't going down during a recession. It's not going to go way up because of this tournament. So I feel like it is a trick to get some sort of Euro feel to it, which could be fun for the fan. But a savvy veteran who's already making 30 plus, honestly, I would say even 25 plus, they're going to say kick rocks.
Yeah,
so you think they sit out? You think they sit out?
I think that they will look for reasons. Of course, you just can't say I'm not playing. They'll get fined and it will be a net negative. But trust me, if there's an injury that's borderline, should I play? They're going to opt out.
So Andrew, to bolster Ulric's argument and to use the European model, which is what this is really trying to model after. The FA Cup in the English Premier League, that is notorious for when you play your young players. The top teams notoriously do not play all of their stars in FA Cup matches or in the Carabao Cup. You save it for the Champions League. You save it for the league matches. But for those mid-season cup, we got knocked out by this random team because we played our goalkeeper who's 18 years old, a center back who's 16, a striker who's 19. We want them to get experience. All right, we're going to test. We have a couple of 2-way players. Maybe we want to vet them for a deeper playoff run. Let's see how they fare. my team is in the playoffs, the team that we're matched up against in the semifinals, to your point, they're not. They may be going for it. You know what? I need to figure out which of my role guys I can trust in these intense games. Braun, you're sitting out. We called up 2 guys from the G League team. They're gonna start this game. That's what's about to happen.
Let me interject real quick. This is where the midseason cup works, where the NBA doesn't have a monopoly on all the different teams that are participating in in a certain region. And I covered this a little bit in an article I wrote, how Bitcoin affects the sports economy. But if there were a world where, and we see it with all these European teams, all these European players holding their weight against the Americans, if there's a league or 2 or 3 that all of a sudden you have, maybe in the NBA, instead of this one centralized 30-team league, you have maybe they contract and maybe it's a 20-team league. But guess what? There's also a 10-team lower league. And now we have the risk profile of, if you don't win a certain tournament, mid-season tournament, you're destined to go down in the next, for the next season. And those teams that are participating, those top teams in the lower division, Division B of the pros in America, top 2 teams in the tournament, they get to participate in the main league next year. I think they already have that in soccer nowadays in Europe, but there's no true incentive besides, we'll throw you a tiny little check, which the players are already making already making enough money so that them saying the game, I already made that argument. But there has to be more argument than just throw them some money. It has to be, if you lose, you die. That's my take on that. So it will happen, but it just will be blasé.
I will say this, for the G League guys who make $30K a year, like getting called up, those 2-way 10-day contracts, like those are typically worth $25,000 for those G League players. You do 2 of those a year, you've more than doubled your salary. You get a shot at playing for $500K. Like, you're gonna see some ballers come out. I definitely like from the G League call-ups. But again, like that's what I'm expecting to see.
That's actually a great system. We should pitch this to Adam Silver, because then like you're creating another funnel into the NBA, right? Outside of draft picks, which is like it's a problem. Like so that's great.
Andrew, I know that you have a hard out. I want to give you the final word, but I want to say thank you so much for joining us. It's been a blast having you. You have the final word as we wrap this up today.
Yeah, man. I think so. One thing I didn't bring up that I did want to say was that I was actually very impressed with Aaron Gordon. I remember Aaron Gordon just being like a dunk guy and just like a guard guy, but now he's shooting threes. He's shooting mid range. He's shown so much like growth. Like I'm super impressed with him.
Aaron Gordon, the former best player on the Orlando Magic, who again took a role player role to win a championship,
and is thriving, and he's completely thriving.
I don't know what you're trying to say to me.
But thank you both for having me on. Y'all are true like Bitcoin experts. I was unworthy to be part of this conversation, but I'm glad that you guys invited me. I appreciate it.
Bro, you work for River, man. You're the star here. We're happy to have you, man. We're finally this is what the show is about, to get Bitcoiners in an environment that's like, okay, now you don't have to talk so intently about the thing that's going to change the world, and let's just talk some hoops. And
it's more to a Bitcoiner's personality than politics, money, finances, the economy.
Love it. Keep it going, guys.
We also like sports ball. But on that note, that's going to do it. We'll be back next week as we start figuring out what off season looks like with all